live in a world that is becoming more and more digital. A integral part of our lives, and they make our everyday life easier in many ways. The digitization process is becoming ever faster, and the global corona pandemic will certainly contribute to this further development. Especially in the industrial environment, as we were able to observe clearly during the first 2 days of Industrial Transformation Mexico, ITM, digitization is indispensable. But digitization also comes with risks. And that is why in the next 60 minutes, I will talk to 4 excellent experts about cybersecurity and data protection in the context of Industry 4.0. Good morning and welcome. My name is Daniel Solterbeck. I work for the German Development Corporation GIZ in Mexico, and I'm the head of the Global Project Quality Infrastructure in Mexico. And I'm pleased to take over today the role of moderator. And as such, I would like to shortly introduce to you my 4 panelists. And I would start with Ana Núñez. She is a director of the Global Digital Supply Chain Center of Excellence at SAP Mexico. And Ana has over 20 years of professional experience in the digital transformation of supply chain processes. Welcome, Ana, and I'm glad you're here today. I would also like to welcome Mario de la Cruz. Mario is Vice President for Cybersecurity at the Mexican Chamber of Electronics, Telecommunication and Information Technologies, CANIETI, of which he was actually president between 2016 and 18. Mario works as Senior Director of Government Affairs for Latin America at the company Cisco. Welcome, Mario. I'm also pleased to welcome Abel Hernandez. Abel is since over 7 years Director General of the Association of Standardization Certification, ANSE, and has over 25 years of professional experience at national and international level of standardization work. Thank you very much for joining us, Abel.
Thanks a lot.
And last but not least, I would like to introduce and welcome Dr. Dennis-Kenji Kipker. Dennis is legal advisor to the German Association for Electrical, Electronic and Information Technologies, VDE, and he is scientific director of the Institute for Information, Health and Medical Law at the University of Bremen in Germany. Good afternoon to you in Germany, Dennis, and welcome to this panel. Before we start right now, I would like to make one remark for our audience, and I would like to invite you to use the chat function in order to share your comments or questions with us. And if you would like to direct your question to a specific expert, please indicate so. Well, and having said that, I would say we can get started with the panel itself. And I would like to start with you, Dennis, in order to emphasize the relevance, importance of this topic of cybersecurity and data protection in the context of Industry 4.0. Considering the recent development of fast digitization in Industry 4.0, from your point of view, why is it important to address cybersecurity and data protection in the context of Industry 4.0?
Thank you very much for your question. So speaking in general, I would say that cybersecurity and data protection are both topics that are becoming increasingly important in economic and social terms as well. And on the one hand, this can be said because more and more networked IT products are being used, which are also thus exposed to ever greater dangers than ever before. And on the other hand, I would also say that customers as well as private consumers are attaching ever greater importance on the field of security and data protection. And this, in my opinion, applies in particular to the environment of Industry 4.0 solutions, because Industry 4.0 has broad areas of application. So you have small, medium-sized enterprises, you have large industrial companies which are using components of Industry 4.0. And therefore, you have a lot of possible areas of application, and also, of course, critical infrastructures. And therefore, currently, or more and more international compliance requirements are being created by the respective national states, and they are also more and more linked to the topic of cybersecurity, data security, as well as technical and organizational measures of data protection. And these concern questions, for example, of market access, questions of certification, data localization, market conformity, as well as access to foreign markets, meaning sales requirements of certain products of Industry 4.0 solutions. And for example, in Germany, we have currently a draft version of the so-called second IT security law of Germany, and this is available for public comments at the moment, and it defines requirements for IT secure global supply chains, which have to be provided by the operators as well as by the manufacturers of also of Industry 4.0 solutions. And at the European level, with regard to the regulation, we are also currently working on the implementation of the so-called EU Cybersecurity Act that came into force in June 2019. And this EU Cybersecurity Act does also contain a certain certification requirements for cybersecurity and also for products which can be used in the context of Industry 4.0.
Thank you very much, Dennis. I think you mentioned already very important issues, especially that cybersecurity and data protection, of course, is not only an issue from the industry perspective, but also the consumer perspective is quite important to consider as well. I would say digitization is somehow, well, we're living in effect, digital transformation is a fact for companies, or it's more a requirement in order to remain competitive. And I would like to address the second question to Anna, considering the current situation and the further development of digitization, from your point of view of SAP, how can the agile and constant adoption of digitization in companies be achieved?
That's a very interesting question, because as a matter of fact, we need to talk about a concept that I'm pretty sure that everyone has discussed over the last couple of days, that is interoperability. And this concept means that we are capable and we are effective in communicating through every machine of in every layer of the automation that is required at our factories or at our distribution centers. If we are capable to do these open communications in regards to standards and formats, taking care of the security of the information flows, that is a key element to achieve a rapid adoption of these technologies. As part of SAP's foundation member of this OPC UA community, Coursera, Rockwell, Siemens, Cisco, that pushes to have an open communications between machine layers and to be faster in how we are extracting the data, how we are processing the data in an environment that is with the current compliance of security required to ensure that your data is safeguarded with all the measurements required per country and globally, obviously.
Thank you very much, Anna. Very important issues, and I'm sure we would deep into the later on deeper maybe.
Yeah.
Into this context. Having a look to the Mexican context, Mario, and considering it's not only a Mexican issue, it's globally a fact that cyber attacks are increasingly enormously. Recent studies have shown that Mexico, in the context of Latin America, is unfortunately one of the countries that suffer most cyber attacks. From your point of view, what is the challenge for industry in Mexico against the background of increasing cyber attacks, and how can personal protection, data protection be strengthened?
Yes, hi Daniel, and thank you for the invitation. Very honored to be with this such a great panel. I think that in Mexico, and you mentioned that very well, we have been suffering several cyber attacks, probably not only during the pandemic, which has increased significantly, but also previously. And I think that we have ecosystem challenges here in Mexico. First, probably most of you know that in Mexico, national cybersecurity strategy was developed and published by the end of 2017, and that was by the end of the previous administration. That was with the support of the Organization of American States. Nevertheless, since it was published at very late stage of such an administration, this national strategy was not implemented and executed, and that's definitely I think that we need in Mexico. We need to update this national cybersecurity strategy, but most importantly, we need to implement it. We need to recognize in Mexico cybersecurity as a matter of national security. We need a national entity to coordinate such an efforts, and there are very good examples in France and Germany of cybersecurity agencies that are in charge of this. Also, we need definitely a specific law on how can we specify the different types of cyber crimes that are not currently in our laws. So these different challenges that I just talked about, Daniel, are making that Mexico is a more vulnerable country compared to other ones. And we have been having very noticeable cases, such as, for instance, the electronic transfer program from the central bank was hacked a couple of years ago. We had also some cyber attacks for Mexico's state-owned oil company, Pemex, and different public entities. So definitely we have to address this ecosystem in a very broad manner challenge that we have to start, defending better as an ecosystem, as a country. And I have to say that this is not only a responsibility from the public sector. Of course, public sector and the government always leads the way, but you need the concurrence and participation of the private sector and, of course, the society in general. Addressing your question regarding data protection, data privacy, I think that definitely and particularly this has been becoming a more and more important issue, but now with the pandemic, it has become a more and more important and relevant topic. For instance, COVID-19 and remote working have created new privacy challenges, but consumers, and you mentioned the consumer's role a few minutes ago, they want their information protected and supported in all way. Also, there are people that are, we call it privacy actives, people that have stopped, for instance, doing business with organization over data privacy concerns. And this is a very important issue. Consumers expect their government to take the lead in protecting their data. And residents of all countries that we survey as Cisco view their privacy laws as very favorably. But definitely consumers want more transparency and how their data is being used. And one of the things that we have found, Daniel, in a research that we conduct at Cisco, is that privacy provides return on investments. We have found that for every dollar that a company or a private organization invests in privacy, they get a return of $2.7 per dollar of invested. So this is a very important thing. Privacy investments has direct business impact. For instance, reduce sales delay, decrease losses from data breaches, greater agility and innovation, enhance operational efficiency, increase company attractiveness to investors. For instance, Dennis was talking about certifications. And actually what we have found is that consumers find value on companies that have certification, and certifications are a buying factor. In Mexico, for instance, 88% of the people that we interviewed believe that privacy certifications are definitely a buying factor. So that's a way to go, I will say.
Thank you very much, Mario. Especially the point of return on investment of privacy investment. I think it's a very interesting aspect. Looking at challenges that digital transformation or further digital development brings along, I would also look at another point and address it to Abel. As digitization and Industry 4.0 brings also along new challenges for standardization. Anna mentioned that it is important to have clear, let's say, protocols or standards for machine-to-machine communication and so on. From the point of view of ANSE, how can standards help companies to increase cybersecurity, guarantee protection of personal data without suffering competitive disadvantages?
Thanks. Well, standards define a context of a common platform for the industry. Nowadays, we are facing the era of Industry 4.0 as a result of the intensive innovation and intensive application of standards in the value chain. The role of the connected devices has accelerated the convergence of the once separate domains in the past: information technology, IT, and operational technology, OT, resulting in industrial Internet of Things. IT and OT are increasingly complementary, but also very different. IT exists in the virtual world, where data is stored, retrieved, transmitted, and manipulated. OT is, in contrast, belongs to the physical world, as deals with real-time processes, while IT has no safeguard every layer on the system. OT is about maintaining control system, on, off, close, open, and so forth. IT is about confidentiality, and OT is about availability. All this has made cybersecurity intrusions and threats more difficult to detect and prevent. A key concept of defense in deep is that security requires a set of coordinate measures according to standards. There are 4 steps that are essential in dealing with the risk and consequences of the cyber attacks. Number 1, understanding the system, what is valuable and what needs most protection. Number 2, understanding the known threats through threat modeling and risk assessment. Number 3, addressing the risk. And number 4, applying the appropriate level of conformity assessment. In this framework, the aim of cybersecurity standards strategy is to protect as many assets as possible, certainly the most important assets, since it is not feasible, sensible, or even efficient to try to protect everything in equal measure. It is important to identify what is valuable and needs the greatest protection. The next step is to identify vulnerabilities in order to prioritize and to erect a defense in deep architecture that ensure business continuity. Resilience is not achieved simply by installing a secure technology. It is mostly about understanding and mitigating risk in order to apply the right protection and the appropriate points in the system. It is vital that this process is very closely assigned with organizational goals, because mitigation decisions may have a serious impact on operations. So that's what I like to say.
Thank you very much, Abel. I think you mentioned an important point, which is like the ability to identify the vulnerability. No, I think that's the first step in order to address or implement certain measures against possible cyber attacks. Anna, looking again at the private sector, at companies, we said that digitization is somehow a requirement in order to remain competitive in this new digital world. From your point of view, or from the experience of SAP as well, what relevance does cybersecurity have in the digital transformation of a company?
So, thanks for the question, because it's a very good one. The relevance is enormous, okay? Because as a matter of fact, as Abel, Mario, Dennis pointed out, the pandemic has taught us that we can do part or some maybe major part of our works remotely, and the factories and the distribution centers were pushed to be automated to the fullest, if when possible, in order to reduce the contact of their physical contact of their collaborators. So, being said that, if we are not quite sure about our policies, our infrastructure require the exact points that are required to be completely safeguarded, obviously the digitalization, it will not move forward into the fullest capabilities, and will not be able to achieve the fullest benefits of having an automated factory, automated distribution center, because we will have some breaches to take to either solve, or we will be restricted to do some operations on that portion. So in order to be capable of have the best benefits around the digitalization framework, there's two things that we need to take into account: what we need to digitalize, how we need to digitalize that, according to what Abel pretty much described. And besides the technology, we need to be in love in solving the problem, or solving the gaps of the security gaps in this case that we need to take over, so we can push forward a complete platform that is open, open in the matters of how we are communicating the message between the layers of the automation, that is secure in regards the protection of our products, the protection of the customer data, and obviously that it's profitable for the company. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. I think we all would agree that Industry 4.0 or digitization opens up great opportunities, value-added potentials, especially also for not only Mexico, also Germany, the growth engine of medium-sized company. But as said already, further digitization also comes along with increasing cyber threats, very different type of cyber threats. And as seen earlier or said earlier, Mexico also suffers a lot of cyber crime globally, cyber attacks causing millions of dollars of economic damages every year. And I would like again to address Mario. Having in mind this background, what should companies, from the point of view of Carnegie, maybe especially medium-sized companies, consider in terms of cybersecurity?
Thank you, Daniel. First, what I would like to recommend to SMEs that are listening to us today is one of the things that we need to say is that nobody, Daniel, no vendor, nor any IT company can tell you that it will prevent you 100% from being cyber attacked. So being said that, you need to adopt a risk management approach, definitely. So how to manage the risk of a cyber attack while you continue in your operations. And one of the things that we have found, and building on Abel's previous response, there are different frameworks. Definitely one of the things that we have analyzed better is the National Institute of Standards and Technology framework, the NIST, better known as NIST framework, but actually it was established that this type of approach should be implemented in the cooperation of the new trade agreement between Mexico, United States, and Canada that has some cybersecurity collaboration and cooperation provisions. But going back to the NIST framework, there are 5 functions that are included in this framework that definitely it's a very simple framework that every SMEs can follow. So they talk, and I'm not gonna go into the details, but they talk about identifying the organization and understanding and managing the cybersecurity risks associated to that organization, protect, detect, respond, and recover. But also, besides adopting this type of approach, Daniel, I think that probably the most important thing is the cybersecurity skills that the people in the organizations have. Because you can have probably the most sophisticated cybersecurity system in the biggest company, but the most important vector of attack for cyber attacks is still the phishing that is done by email. So if you are not properly trained to identify those threats, with the most sophisticated system, you're going to create a vulnerability to your organization. So we, the people, are the weakest link in cybersecurity. So we need to focus. Of course, the people that are in charge of the systems, the chief information security officers, are extremely relevant function within the organizations. But we, the people, the users, the consumers, have a relevant role to play in cybersecurity. So that will be probably my main recommendation for small and medium companies.
Thank you very much, Mario. I think it's a very, very important issue to remind that actually we ourselves, the workers, are also a door open now maybe for possible and dangerous cyber threats. Talking about cybersecurity and data protection in an increasing digital context, I would like to look also again at the international perspective, because I think also, even though national contexts might be different, digitization and global digitization doesn't know country borders. So it's also important to have a look at the international perspective. And I would like to address again Abel, having in mind also the international standardization work. I would like to know from your point of view or experience from ANSE, why are internationally harmonized standards in the field of Industry 4.0 and especially with regard to cybersecurity so important?
Oh, good, thanks. Well, international harmonized standards are so important because of the possibility to build a common approach. A risk-based system approach increases the confidence of all. Sorry. International harmonized standards are so important because of the possibility to build a common approach. A risk-based system approach increases the confidence of all stakeholders, but by demonstrating not only the use of security measures, but also to establish the best practices. An organization has implemented measures efficiently and effectively. This means combining the right standards with the right level of conformity assessment rather than treating them as distinct areas. One important issue here about harmonized standards are that they are building the ABC for cybersecurity, which means A for assessment, B for the best practices, and C for the conformity assessment for monitoring and maintenance the system to manage the risk, the cyber risk. Risk-based system approach increases the confidence of all stakeholders by demonstrating not only the use of security measures based on best practices, but also that the organization has implemented the measure efficiently. The aim of the conformity assessment is to assess the components of the system, the competencies of the people, my colleague just mentioned, operating and maintaining, and the process of procedure uses to run it. This means using different kinds of conformity assessment, ranging from corporate self-assessment to reliable suppliers declaration or independent third-party assessment and testing, whichever seems most appropriate according to the different level of risk. In the case of international arena, we have horizontal standard and vertical standards. We have the IEC 27000 family, helps to protect purely information system. And on the other hand, we have IEC 62443 to the other horizontal standard series is designed to keep OT systems running in the real world. It can be applied to any industrial environment, including critical infrastructure facilities such as power utilities or nuclear plants, as well as in health and transport sectors. Complementing the horizontal standard are custom solutions designed nowadays to meet the needs of specific sectors. We have several international committees working on this. There are vertical standards covering the specific security needs of the nuclear sector, industrial communication networks, industrial automation, and the industry, as an example. But the international activities are very intensive nowadays. We know that the regulation is coming, so we need to build a common platform with a technical solution to facilitate the role of the regulation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Abel. I think you mentioned an important aspect, which is like the creating the confidence. No, by using or applying standards or international harmonized standards, you create somehow also for users, clients, somehow confidence how you as a company might be dealing or implementing data, for example. Remaining on the global level and the international experience, of course, the standardization is one aspect, but I assume that regarding cybersecurity and especially data protection, the approach goes beyond standards. Both Dennis and Mario mentioned the necessity of having also kind of regulations or laws regarding cybersecurity. So from having this in mind, I would like to ask Dennis, from your point of view, why it is important to address cybersecurity and data protection issues on an international level.
Yeah, we had discussed this topic, I guess, several times in the last few minutes. So it is important to mention that those global data flows, they do not stop at national borders, and trade flows also, for example, of Industry 4.0 hardware components do not stop at national borders. And this is a reason why there are many problems and different requirements that are applicable to companies operating all around the world. And in addition, as I have also mentioned it with regard to your first question, Daniel, we do not have a single law on cybersecurity or data security which we can apply globally. So the global regulation of cybersecurity and data protection is becoming more and more complex because the regulators are addressing single problems and single laws. And for this reason, at the moment, we have a very multi-layered and faceted landscape of legal cybersecurity regulation in different states. And the problem is that this very complex landscape is also very different to understand for SMEs, and it's very difficult accessible because of the link from law to technology, which is also not very clear very often due to the use of so-called undefined legal terms. So what does state of the art in security mean from a legal perspective, and what does it mean from a technical perspective as well? And we see it all around the world that companies, and especially also small and medium-sized enterprises, are expanding more and more into foreign markets than ever before. And this may also be triggered due to the corona pandemic situation that we currently face. And these small and medium-sized enterprises, they also, of course, have to fulfill for the products, for the services, for the software, the same compliance requirements as big transnational companies have to fulfill. So this is becoming more and more a challenge, that we have more and more laws. These laws are becoming more and more complex. And when you compare the situations that you have in international cybersecurity regulation from now compared to the situation that we faced 5 years ago in 2015, you will see that many national states created new laws and many national states also followed European regulation. And in the European Union, we had, for example, the first really cybersecurity law was the so-called EU Network and Information Security Directive, which came into force in 2016, and which has been transposed into the national legislations of the EU member states. We currently have the EU Cybersecurity Act, which gave more powers to the European Network Information Security Agency, the ENISA, and created this certification system of cybersecurity, which contains three different layers of cybersecurity. And cybersecurity regulation, global cybersecurity regulation, affects every step of a life cycle in an Industry 4.0 product. So it starts with manufacturing, and we have heard it as privacy by design is becoming more and more important. It's also security by design, which is becoming more and more important. And the process also contains not only the privacy by design, also the discontinuation of products, for example, the question which is associated with that of how long software updates and IT security updates must be available for products that are still working, also in dangerous Industry 4.0 requirements such as critical infrastructures. And this question is also closely linked from a legal point of view to tort law claims when people are being injured. For example, in Germany, we had recently the case in September that a university hospital has been hacked. It has been hit by a ransomware attack, and as a result, the hospital IT could not work anymore, and there was a patient which needed immediate treatment, and this person has died due to the fact that there was a successful cyber attack that has been conducted. So you can say that global markets therefore also require companies to take global measures. But of course, this is not only a question that applies to Industry 4.0. This applies to every product which has to be secure, from IoT devices for private consumers up to Industry 4.0 components that are being used in critical infrastructures such as hospitals.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Very, very important issues, very understandable, but sad example from Germany was a recent attack on a hospital, but it shows the danger that comes along with cyber attacks, no, or threats. Well, first of all, thank you so far to the four of you. We have received some questions from the audience, which I would like to take up and address to you. Feel free to raise your hand if you want to answer it. The first one goes in the direction to the Mexican sphere or environment, and the question is, what is being done in Mexico to raise awareness about cybersecurity, and especially to bring technologies closer to SMEs that are ultimately part of the productive chains?
You would like me to address that, Daniel?
Yeah, Mario.
Please, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have to say that, of course, one of the things that we have been doing, Daniel, is we have put, and I also participate, besides Cañete, I participate at the American City Committee. And one of the things that I've been doing in both organizations to raise awareness is to establish with my colleague peers, my peers from the industry, is to establish a set of recommendations, right, that we need to address as a country. And as I was mentioning in my previous intervention, these ecosystem challenges. So one of the things that we are doing is to have meetings with different key cybersecurity stakeholders in Mexico to provide these recommendations, some of which I already talked about, right, about the prioritizing of cybersecurity, the national security strategy, etc. Because one of the problems that we have in Mexico is that we don't have a specific head or figure or agency to talk to about who is in charge of all cybersecurity issues in the country, right? So you have to establish a very fragmented dialogue strategy in speaking with several cyber stakeholders. So definitely the need of this entity or person in charge of cybersecurity in Mexico is a very much needed policy that we need. So we have been working with these different actors. We are participating in different events. Right now, there are at least 3 or 4 different cybersecurity bills in Congress, 1 or 2 in the House, and another 2 in the Senate. And we need, and I'm glad that this is happening, right? Different legislators are taking a lot of interest in cybersecurity, but we need to establish as a group and create just one bill, because these are just isolated initiatives. Other thing that I can tell you about in terms of awareness is an initiative that at Cisco I'm working directly with Organization of American States to create awareness in all Latin American region, with focus in Mexico, Chile, Colombia, and Brazil. And we are trying to do 3 things specifically. One is to establish these spaces of dialogue between government, industry, and society. We call it cybersecurity innovation councils. We have already have a first session here in Mexico a few weeks ago with the participation of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which, by the way, they are having a very active role in cybersecurity and cyber diplomacy, along with the National Guard and other entities that are individually doing a great job in cybersecurity. Second, we are setting an innovation fund for cybersecurity initiatives that we're going to publish together with the OAS in the next couple of weeks. And third, it's sad to hear that it's ending these days, but we provided for 2 or more months free cybersecurity courses through our Networking Academy initiative in terms of introduction to cybersecurity and cybersecurity essentials, to provide training and more awareness to people. So these are some of the activities that we are doing in Mexico in terms of awareness.
Thank you very much, Mario. Many aspects you mentioned. Just asking if Anna, if would you like to add any aspects from the point of view of SAP?
Yes, I think Mario's answer was pretty much complete. It's really important that we raise the awareness of having these heads of these guardians taking care of how, when, and these policies are being deployed around the organizations. Obviously, that it's also aligned to the laws and regulations that are currently into the country, because we can have the best automated factory, okay, but if we are not compliant, if we are not taking care of how we are protecting the data, the information, and Dennis just mentioned it's not only about manufacturing processes, it's just as well around design processes, and design processes are more like dedicated in that matter, because obviously there are patents around these products that are currently in design with that, and for sure we need to make sure that being redundant, that we have the local heads in our organization in place, the policies in place, and if the current authority policies are not really strong enough or not really detailed enough, let's look for global policies. And as I can mention an example of GDPR, as what the law was being developed in Mexico was not as strong as the European GDPR, and the best way to ensure that we are fully covered is to put these laws together with the councils of our legal advisors to make sure that our policies are compliant, our processes are compliant as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe to deeper this aspect, I could take up a second question that we received. Again, feel free to.
We have to for the question.
Sorry?
We are still on time, right?
Yeah, we're still on time. We're still on time. Again, feel free, whoever wants, to answer. The question would be like, if we think on the further transition to digitalization or digitization of the company, from your point of view, what should be the first step to consider? from the point of view of company, and what basic security measures should be implemented? Anna, you raised the hand.
Yeah, I raised the hand, and I said some minutes in 10 minutes earlier, is you need to be sure that you have already identified the problem that needs to be solved. Okay, and within the identification, the problem to be solved, that can mean I need to automate this, that, or the other at the factory level, or this, that, or the other center, or this, that, and the other of the design labs that will communicate to the manufacturing processes. Once that is fully identified and understood, you need to also address the security gaps between those processes, okay, in order to have a full answer on that regards, in order to select the best technology that will allow you to solve the problem. Mario, I don't know, or Abel, if you want to elaborate further.
No, I think I'm good. You covered pretty much everything, Anna. Thank you.
Okay, then I have one further question, taking up your answer, Anna. Define the problem, but that might be also the first key problem. How do I define my vulnerability as a company? Are there any tools or instrument that the company might be able to use in order to somehow screen the company environment and in order to identify what is the key problem or key gaps, security gaps?
No, I think, Daniel, that we have covered some frameworks. Abel mentioned one. I mentioned Denise one. I think that going through those frameworks, they are very specific in terms of the type of activities that an organization, public or private, can do in order to prepare themselves to be cybersecurity ready. I think that's the way to start, right? And I think there's plenty of also free trainings online that people can look for. I mentioned two from us, but there are many other choices free in the market that people should address. But definitely start with a framework to identify their current situation. I think that's the way to start in order to addressing cybersecurity challenges. No, I also would like to remark what Dennis mentioned in terms of international cooperation. Definitely a very, very important issue to address. He mentioned that cybersecurity doesn't recognize any border. Mexico also needs to become more active internationally, that participating officially in the Budapest Convention. Even though we participate as an observers, we need to make the proper legal changes in order to participate in that also. That's extremely important. Sorry for it's not addressing the question, but that's an important issue.
That is a really important issue to cover, as a matter of fact, to be sure that you are pretty much taking consideration all the policies around it, okay? Because our supply chains in this case are global. They do not know about borders, so we need to look into global perspective to be sure that we are fully compliant on that one.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, both of you. Any further statements from Dennis or Abel regarding this issue?
Of course, well, I like just to tell that Mexico is a very intensive in the industry 4.0. In fact, is the leader in Latin American countries. We are receiving a lot of investment in order to implement industry 4.0. Mexico is a part of the main standard development organization around the world. We are a PIN member in IC, we are a PIN member in ISO, we have an important participation in ITU. So let's put the standard to work. We have a lot of standard, a lot of toolbox, so we just need to go ahead with that. Recently, we have a new law in Mexico, the Quality Infrastructure Law. This law tried to be a part of these global trends. So the small companies are able to use this law to be a part of the national committees. The international standards are open for Mexico. So we have the toolbox ready.
Great, thank you very much, Abel. Dennis, any comments from your side?
Yeah, maybe I would like to talk about VDE and VDE's resources as a technology association. So we, of course, have contacts to numerous member companies, and many of them are working in the field of Industry 4.0. So it means in the technical field, development of hardware, the development of software, and many of them are also globally expanding small and medium-sized enterprises. And we, as a technology association, have created an independent competence center on these cybersecurity topics. And we have also taken up risks for cybersecurity and data protection at a relatively early stage. And we have also created a computer emergency response team, CERT, at VDE, which should be seen as a trustworthy and secure platform to support the exchange, the confidential exchange of information on cybersecurity threats. And I think to have such a platform to see how other SMEs are dealing with cybersecurity threats, incidents, and updates of their software and hardware products is very important. And it is also important for companies always to take a look to the global legal requirements in the respective markets where they want to sell their products. I know that is not very easy, but often there's also specialized lawyers in the field of IT security law, which are doing their business in the respective countries.
Okay. Great, thank you very much. I think indeed it became clear that both, or that in general, associations or chambers of the industry play also a crucial role in order to support or offer some kind of support mechanisms for their members. No? Maybe one question regarding Mario, the last one, and maybe just a 1 minute answer so that we keep the time. The question would be, what is the relationship between cybersecurity and the concept of digital citizenship?
Well, that's a tough one. I think that probably Dennis is very prepared to respond to that. No, because in Mexico we haven't advanced a lot in terms of digital citizenship. I think in Europe we have great examples on that. Estonia is definitely a model that everybody who is interested in digital citizenship should take a look at. I have been fortunate to be invited by the OAS through Canieti to represent the Mexican industry in a couple of visits to Estonia. January this year, which looks like, I don't know, ages ago, and last year. And actually, and seeing the model of Estonia is very related. Actually, they are basing most of their public services right online, and actually you can become. I'm as a Mexican can become a digital citizen from Estonia if I like to and have access and to open a company in Estonia and therefore in Europe, right? So definitely a model to explore. But for those models to work, Daniel, trust is a very important concept, right? If you don't trust the system, how can you make it grow, right? And the key way to build that trust is to have secure systems. So I would say that will be the relationship. Cybersecurity creates trust in the systems, and of course, you can enhance potential initiatives like digital citizenship, as they have in Estonia.
Great, thank you very much. Well, looking at the time, I would like to thank you, four of you, first for your availability, for your contribution to this interesting panel. Thank you very much. I think you highlighted a lot of key issues that need to be considered in the more digital world or in the industry 4.0. The latest aspect you mentioned is the creation of trust, to keep our systems, even though they are more digital, more connected, to keep them trustworthy. And I think it was Anna who also mentioned it, that it needs to be, or that the cybersecurity issue need to be fully integrated into also companies' strategies. No, it's important to have it maybe a top-down priority of having cybersecurity in the company implemented. Even though cyber threats are developing very fast, like the very traditional one, like Mario mentioned, phishing, are still a very current issue or problem for companies. Yeah, it's on us, on the employees of companies to keep our company safe as well. And as Dennis and Abel mentioned, also the international approach or international cooperation is important. International harmonized standards are an interesting tool in order to have an instrument that might help to identify vulnerabilities in the company. And yes, so once again, thank you very much for your time, for participating in this panel. It was a pleasure for me moderating it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure and an honor.